Hi and welcome guys. Today we're going to work on the backend and define our Express application that will be able to surface the translations through the DeepL API. And to start, we will download Node.js. So if you already have that, you can skip this part and go right to the coding. And yeah, let's do it. So let's install Node.js. So first we go to nodejs.org and then to download, and then we go to the latest stable build and we choose the installer for our OS. So I'm working on Windows, so I will take the Windows installer and then we will just open it up. Takes a moment, yeah. And from here we can oh, I already have it, so we can change it, well, that's what you would usually see, I guess. And here you see you get the runtime, the core pack manager, the NPM package manager, and it will automatically be added to your path, so you can use that in the CLI, and you get the documentation shortcuts. And now it will ask you if you want the optional tools installed that some NPM modules may need, but we can go without that. And then you just click on next and you're done. You can just open up a new terminal and type, for example, npm v and node v, and you should get a version for both of them. First we will define a simple Express app example to see if everything is working correctly. So for that we will create an app of type Express and we will initialize it from here, and then we will simply write an endpoint. It will just be a get endpoint. It will take a function. In this case we will define a function inline like this, and the function takes a request and a response, but we will only use the response for now and send back hello world. It will be quite a simple application for now with only one endpoint. And now we will define the listener. So our application will listen on the port that we define. For now, let's say the port should be 3000. Well, actually it can't be. For us it has to be 8000 because 3000 will already be occupied. And then let's say app is listening on port like this. Alright, and that should be enough to start up the application. So now I will show you two ways to do that. And so the first way is to go into the backend directory and just run npm run dev. Oh, actually something seems to be missing. Alright, let's try npm install first. We have everything, so let's try npm run dev again. Alright, now it worked just fine. So we can open up a browser like so and go to port 8080, and there we go, we get a response because we're talking to the default path which we have defined here, and we told the endpoint to return just hello world, and that's functioning well. Alright, so let me show you the second way to start up the application. So with this we're going to stop the application. You can do that with Ctrl+C, and here we will stay inside the root directory of a project, which is language translator app in my case. And we will run docker compose build backend. Oh, Docker is not running. Yeah, make sure that you have Docker installed. Alright, now I'm starting up the Docker engine. Alright, now that the backend is built, we can start it up. Volume backend node modules mount path must be absolute. Alright, so when we are in here, let's try it like so. Now it's working correctly, so let's do the same thing for the front-end service in the Docker compose file. So we have an absolute path for both of the node modules. And with that done, we can try and see if it worked by reloading the application. And well, let me start up. Yeah, seems to be working fine. And there we go. We will continue with this way of starting up the application because we're going to have the DeepL API key as an environment variable, so we don't have to write it into our code itself. Okay, let's continue with expanding the functionality of our backend. For that, I created an API directory where we will keep all our API related files, so any file that handles logic that would talk to an external API, we will put it in here and we will group them by the API name. So we're using the DeepL API, so I call it the DeepL API. And in addition to that, we will write an Axios file to define our custom Axios client. So let's import Axios in the Axios file, and then define our DeepL client with axios.create. Oh, like this. Then we will define a base URL, which will be api3.deepl.com, because that is the base path of all endpoints from DeepL API. We will define a timeout. We will define a header for the authorization. For that we will write DeepL auth key and then the DeepL API key. Alright. Okay, what is wrong here? Interesting. I wrote it wrong. I see. And we will export it, but let's export it up here. Okay. So now the DeepL API key is missing. For that, I would create another directory and I will call it. I will create a file called environment in there, and in here I will import .env that we have also installed in the setup, configured. Now we can return the DeepL API key. And this will read the DeepL API key out of our environment variables that are defined in the Docker container and assign it to a constant that we will then export and make accessible for our Axios client. So we import the DeepL API key, and with that we're done defining our custom Axios client. So let's continue with the API. In here we will import the DeepL client from Axios that we have defined here, like our custom Axios client. And we will also define some language codes In our case, I will take German and English because those are my languages. You can take whichever language you prefer. Although it should be one of the language codes defined by DeepL, so you can look that up in the documentation if you'd like. But for example, I'm just going to use German and English. So our function is going to accept a language of the type language code and a text of type string that should be translated, and we will return a promise that will resolve into a string. Okay, so here we use the DeepL client to make a GET request to v2 translate, which is defined by the DeepL API. And as parameters, we will pass the text and the target language. And then when it resolves successfully and we get a response, I want the response to, I want to read the data out of the response and return it to the function, return it from this function. And in case of an error, I want the, well, let's format it for now. I want the error status like such. Oh, what's happening? Ah, okay, I got it. Like such. And I want to return the error response. Oops. Okay. And with that, we have written our first function that will translate the text and will be our main function in this application. So let's use this function now in our Express app and make it available to the front end. And to do so, we will require some more imports. So first, we will be needing cause to allow cross-origin access. Then we will need our DeepL translator for, well, that's the functions that we have defined in our DeepL API. And I want to import all the functions as DeepL translator so that we can access them from this namespace. And we want the body parser to read the data that the frontend sends to us inside the request. And of course we will, oh, let's leave that for now actually. Okay, so let's get the body parser like this. Let's do it like this. Let's apply the cause middleware to our application. And now we will rewrite this function. First, let's add the typing here as well from request and response. Both of those come from Express, so you can import them up here. And then we will first retrieve the language and the text from the request body params. And then we will use the DeepL translator to call the function that we have defined and pass in the language and the text that we got from the front end or from whoever's calling our API. And then we want to get the translation back from the function that we have defined and send it back in a response. Alright. With that done, it should be running just fine, so let's do a quick check. If I go to the default endpoint again, it should not give me anything, theoretically. but it still does, because the changes are not applied. Okay, that's interesting, because they should be applied. That is quite interesting. Let's try this again. Theoretically, it should allow us to update the application on the fly, but it doesn't for now. But we'll check on it later. But first, let's install cause, because it seems we are missing the dependency. Now that we have that, let's try to run the application again. Oh, I see. So, oh yeah, I was in the wrong directory. So let's delete those. Alright, so let's install course types, because that seems to be missing. And now that we're done with that, let's go back to our application and do the docker compose up backend and see if it finds the course dependency now. No, it doesn't. Alright, so let's build it again. Alright, so let's continue. Let's try to run the backend again and see what's happening. Right, so now it seems to be running fine. The issue was that we still had some dangling images from a previous application that was causing conflicts with this one, because I did a practice run of the application before. Alright, so now this endpoint should return us nothing. And that's fine, as it should, because we removed the endpoint for the basic route. And now we can try translate, and it's not working. And that's fine, that is expected, because we're not giving in any of the required data that we have defined here, so the language and the text. And it can't really read from the body params, because we're not passing any params at all. So that is fine for now. Let's put the JSON parser in here as well, so that the endpoint can use it. Yeah, that is actually quite interesting, because I'm wondering if it actually applies the changes instantly right now, as it should, because it doesn't feel that way, but okay, that's fine for now. Okay, and with that we're done defining our backend and the route that we will be using for the front end.